Let's talk a little bit more about jQuery selectors. Now, we have a good foundation. I have of jQuery knowledge. I have my power.js at the bottom. I have my ready function, good to go. I want to start messing around with selectors so you guys feel confident about selecting anything on a page. Fortunately, jQuery selectors, if you remember, are just CSS3 and then some. And it's almost CSS3. There's some weird use cases, but I'll show you all this in a second. And what I want to do for good practice, let's add a list to our website. And I'm using this cool helper tool, refresh the page. We got a list on the website. And ideally, you should be able to select the first one, the last one, the even ones. You should probably know how to do that in CSS. I'll walk through examples though, and what we could do are, you can select just by ID. So if we wanted to create an ID of second one, this is super specific. We could add a class of make me super bold, or we'll call this super bold. And I actually have in my styles here, I created a utility class called super bold, which is just obnoxious, where makes it font weight 700, italic, underline, tries to add a background to it. Really messy, but we'll get the idea. So I'm going to add a class to the second one of the ID. It works. Now, you're not supposed to have two IDs on a page. That's just not one ID per page per element. That's how you write good, valid markup. But if I refresh here, you can see it's not working despite me having two IDs. And you know, if you're doing two IDs, you're doing it wrong. You're doing your CSS wrong. You're doing a markup wrong. So don't do that. But you could, if we wanted to, turn this to a class. And now we're targeting both of them. And that works. That's pretty neat. And that's how you can target with just your normal IDs and your classes. You can do, so let's do a class of this. Inner list, or we'll call this cool list, and we could target cool list li, and we can add a super bold regardless of whatever classes or IDs are on here, and we can add the super bold class to all of them. And all JavaScript or jQuery is doing is, if you guys can see, whoa, kind of zoomed in a little bit too far. You can see super bold is being added to all of these, regardless that this had the class. Now, let's keep expanding on this. What if I want to only do the first? So there's a CSS3 selector for first child, and I'm going to run this, but we'll see what happens. And then you guys will kind of I'll show you. So it goes first child, it works. That's pretty neat. You probably knew that was going to happen. You could do just first like this. That works as well. This isn't CSS3, valid CSS3 syntax, but that is a jQuery thing. Remember, there are some. So you could do it that way, or you could do it through the CSS3 way. We could do last child. We could do something like this if we wanted to. So what if we wanted the first child and the last child? I mean, you could have two like this, but that's bad code. You should do something instead where you're not rewriting code and you're kind of optimized. So if you can see here, we're just selecting the first child, then we're selecting the last child, just like CSS, comma separated, refresh, it works. We could do, I'm just going to keep going on here and do one more. Nth child 3, refresh that. Let's see if this works. All even ones. It does. Pretty cool. You can see you can kind of navigate the entire document pretty easily. Well, what if we run into a situation where we are a little bit more specific? So we have, we'll call this the cool list is Nick is a noob. And then we'll add Chris is not a noob. And then we'll add maybe some just random names here. We'll say John, Sally, and Chris 2, like a second Chris. Refresh the page here. And what you could do in jQuery, you could just check out the docs for these jQuery selectors and go straight to their documentation for selectors. And they're going to have all these different ways of kind of selecting things. And one of the ways that I'm going to show you is using a neat little trick thing that they have. So we could do something like this. Cool list that contains the word Chris. And you can see I'm running into escaping issues. Remember the single quotes versus double quotes? So we could switch this to double quotes. And let's add this. 1 second. We're almost there. There we go. So we're saying cool list that contains the word Chris. Let's add the class as super bold. And real quick, I just want to clear that all out. Okay. Refresh. And now we got the word we're selecting by the text node Chris, which is kind of crazy. This isn't really performant, but if you're using jQuery, don't think you can't use this. This is absolutely okay to use. And then we could switch this to things like Nick, and that's how you can select based on text. So the idea here is you're going to get thrown into situations where you can't put a class on something, you can't put an ID on something, but that's okay. You should be able to select anything on a page regardless. You're just going to have to get creative with it. And that's kind of how the selectors work. Not much to it. Go on to the next lesson, and I'll talk a little bit more about how to navigate the DOM or the HTML.